Hello, everybody. Welcome to Table Talk here from Liberty Hill Church. Once again, it's us, Pastor Joe, Pastor Greg, and we're here to talk to you a little bit about things going on in our church. A few ideas from this past Sunday's sermon. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm okay.
Good. Hope everybody out there is doing great too.
Yes. So we had a big Sunday because we finally had folks here worshiping with us. That was a lot of fun.
It was great. I think we all know that you can worship by yourself on an abandoned desert island if you have to, but there is a different dynamic when you're with other people who love the Lord with you, love one another. There's just a completely different energy about it. Very uplifting and encouraging. It was great to have everybody back in a limited capacity. You know, we know that a lot of people weren't able to be with us.
Right.
A lot of people said, you know what, we're going to worship from home. We want others to be able to have the room. We get it. And other people still aren't yet quite ready to be in groups a little bit larger than their families. We understand that also.
Yes.
So we know that not everybody is going to be ready to come back yet. We're fine with that. You go at your own pace. It was good to have those back Sunday that could be here, though.
Right. I was so happy to see so many of the people here that I hadn't seen in a while. So,
Yes.
And when the time comes, if you haven't been here, we're ready to see you. So we're looking forward to it whenever you feel comfortable coming back. We've got a seat for you.
We do. And just to reiterate, we have seats set up in the sanctuary with plenty of space to allow for social distancing, meeting the requirements set down by our state. We have overflow rooms should we need them. And those overflow rooms, for instance, if you come with another family or some friends, would be great for you and your unit to be able to worship together. It's a comfortable and good environment. So when you're ready, we'll be ready for you.
Very good, very good. So we had a little bit of bummer news Sunday. Pastor Brandon is going to move on to a different area of ministry.
He is. That was disappointing news for us, but we're excited for him. He's taking a different position in another church, so he's branching out of student ministry. He's going to be a campus pastor at a satellite church from Real Life Church in Mountain Home, Arkansas. We're excited for he and Whitney. This is a big move for them.
Yes.
And we're excited to see what God's going to do in their lives and in that church.
Right. Be praying for them, and as they make this transition, it's happening pretty quick for them.
It is. Quicker on us than we would like, but
Right.
Understandable that they've got to hit the ground running. A lot of work to be done at this new church plant that they're working with. So our blessings and peace go with them.
And as far as for us, with his departure, things are already moving for what student ministry is going to be like in the next few months as far as planning. And we've met with some of the most all of the student ministry volunteers and talked about what are we going to do in this interim while we don't have a student ministry pastor.
Yeah, we've got plans in place, and we'll keep you as a church posted as we go further along on our search for the right person to be able to join our team and take care of our students.
Right. Be praying diligently for that, but that is a big deal. But it's one of our core values that ministry to children and to students is essential here at Liberty Hill. So we're going to make sure we do our very best to take care of that.
Absolutely. Some of you that are Liberty Hill family members, you know that we have a list of core values of things that are most dear and precious to us, and one of those is ministry to families and children. We believe that it's better to teach a young child early so that they have less regret later on in life. And that carries over not just from children's ministries, but into student ministries as well. We know we all accumulate regret. That's the easiest thing to accumulate in life that there is. But we want to minimize that regret and maximize gratitude as we go into our adult years.
Yes, very good. You ready to talk about this past Sunday's message?
Let's do it.
Okay, so one of the things that jumped out at me from the message is in the first part of your message, you were talking about how God has made us to be free. And I started thinking about the Declaration of Independence, that we're endowed by our Creator with these rights that are inalienable, whatever that word means.
Yeah.
And one of those is liberty or freedom.
Yeah.
So is that idea of individual freedom, is that a biblical idea? Is that just a good slogan for democracy?
It's both. Before I got into actually kicking off the new series of habits, I wanted to address the philosophy and policy differences that exist in the way people form opinions, how we as a church make decisions, and really all across our culture right now, we are finding tension. And when people are having differences of opinion, that tension escalates.
Right.
Nobody has the same idea on when is the right time to return to business as normal, or should we ever return to business as normal. Some people are saying we have to redefine normal. Some people are outraged at the idea of a new normal means that we've given up things. So how do we kind of navigate that troubled water? And I feel like it's important to understand that there is a difference between philosophy and policy. Philosophy is the uncovering of principles or foundations that drive ideas. Policy is how you apply those ideas. And I believe that freedom is an essential philosophy that we find everywhere throughout Scripture. I mean, even the most basic sense of it is that if God requires anything of us, that means that we have a responsibility to Him. The very idea of a responsibility implies freedom. In other words, we could be responsible to Him. We could do what He requires us to do, or we could neglect that responsibility. We could go our own way. That's the essence of freedom.
Right.
That you and I are able to choose a course of action, that we were able to choose a set of consequences implies freedom. And where I went Sunday in talking about the scripture in Galatians 5:1, where it tells us that Christ has set us free, so don't again be under the yoke of slavery again, is the New Testament teaching is that Christ has set us free. Now it's speaking specifically there about a doctrinal issue. It was addressing a specific teaching concern in the New Testament. But in doing so, we find that there was a policy that Paul was teaching based on a greater philosophy. And the philosophy is this, is that God has so created us for freedom that He was using Christ as an opportunity to repeal His own temporary law that He put upon mankind in the Old Testament.
Right.
So God was even saying, even these rules that I put on you, I'm pulling those back so that you have greater freedom in Christ. So there's a principle. And then we learn to apply policy. How do we apply that principle to different areas of our lives? The difference between philosophy and policy there.
Right. Well, I could go into a lot of theological stuff about that, because it handles like this situation we're talking about with the pandemic, but it also deals with the way we deal with each other as far as things that you would do that I would disagree with or think were wrong. I still give you that freedom. I guess I did go into it, didn't I?
Oh, and that's fine.
Yeah.
And that's something that I actually talked a little bit about Sunday is that freedom means that I will allow things of others that maybe I wouldn't allow of myself.
Right.
That I might be able to say, I tolerate that or allow that in you. That doesn't mean that it's something that I would do or agree with, but freedom means that I allow you that. And if I try to become a tyrant myself and rule over you, then I'm stealing your freedom or suppressing your freedom.
Right.
And this is tough because it seems that in our present climate right now, when we're talking about the pandemic, is that people are trying to divide into either of the two camps. Freedom, it's all or nothing, no restrictions, let us be. Or people are so concerned about the consequences of what that will do and that it could set the virus into a fast track of spreading, that people say, no freedom, no, it has to be safety first, it has to be health first. And so people are starting to get polarized. But I don't think it's either or.
Right.
There has to be a way to bring freedom and responsibility together.
Yes.
We have to be aware that this is a virus that is potentially more dangerous for some people, vastly more so for some people than it is for others.
Right.
We have freedom to do, but we also have responsibility to contend with. So we want to find a way to do both. To be safe is important, but there's a philosophy there. Safety first is not policy. That's a philosophy. In our lives, we accommodate safety on the way to pursue other purposes.
Right.
An example of this, something that I used Sunday, I think it was the second service. I don't think I talked about it much in the first service. If you really want to be safe, you don't ever get in a vehicle. The number of people that are killed in highway accidents is heartbreaking.
Right.
Especially drunk driving accidents, for instance. It's heartbreaking. But we don't stop traveling in vehicles. We find a way to do so as safely as possible while still allowing us to achieve our objectives. If it was truly safety first, no motor vehicles, no highways, close them down. But instead we say we have to travel. It's part of life. We have to pursue business. We have things to do, places to go. It's part of freedom. So instead, let's find a way to safely, as safe as possible, move from point A to point B. So we have seat belts. So we have speed limits. We have things to try to bring responsibility into the freedom. The same way I mentioned drunk driving.
Right.
Same way there. If we really wanted to say safety first, no alcohol sales. Period.
Yeah.
How many crimes would disappear? No alcohol, right? But we don't do that. We instead say people are free. This is a part of our culture. It's part of mankind. So instead, let's navigate within an allowance of alcohol. So we make it criminal to drive while intoxicated, but alcohol is still available.
Right.
There's a way of bringing freedom and responsibility together. And I know those may be extreme cases, and you can find argumentative loopholes in there, but the principle is the same in every area of our lives. We find a way to achieve the first priority, and we say, this is what we have to do. This is of utmost responsibility. How do we most safely do that? We do that in our workplaces. We do that in our everyday lives. That's what we have to find a way to do in the middle of this pandemic. And it is not easy. We see so many different political opinions and policies being developed because there is not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
Everybody's still trying to figure this out. Same way in churches. It's not like what one church, say, in Kentucky can do is the same that a church in Texas or in Missouri should do. We're in different counties, in different regions, different needs, and different responsibilities.
Right.
So we're trying to navigate through all that.
Yeah. And I thought you brought up Galatians 5:13 in the message that we have been given freedom by God, but it is God calls us not just to live willy-nilly free for myself, but He calls us to live in love for each other, to express that freedom and love for other people.
Big difference, isn't it?
You're right.
Just because I can do something doesn't mean I should do something.
Yes.
And really, that scripture is putting out, here is the first responsibility, love one another.
Right.
So that's the priority. And we find a way to bring all other priorities under that umbrella. And love is pursuing the highest good.
Yes.
The highest possible good to be achieved. That's what love does. At times that will cause me to sacrifice for you. There are other times and it will cause me to say no to you. I can't do that because it's the pursuit of a higher good.
Right.
That fluctuates from situation to situations. So to have freedom and responsibility together, it really clarifies, here's the thing, you look for the highest possible good. And when you have competing ideas of good, it gets complicated. This is where gray areas in life come from. That's where you have to wisely and lovingly sit down with one another and figure out a course through it. Just yelling at each other and insulting one another just drives people further away into their camps, and you're not going to have the most clear picture of the common good once you've labeled someone as an enemy or an idiot,
right.
Some other way to say there's just no talk here.
Yes, yeah. And that's so pervasive in our society to just label someone and dismiss them. But that to love somebody, even that believes different than you, that has a different philosophy than you, that's what God calls us to do.
Yes. That doesn't mean that you have to agree with everything that they say.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you have to say, well, I love you, so I can't disagree with you. It's not that. It's that you find a way to respectfully present your philosophy, clarify your founding principle, philosophy of thinking that says, here's where the ideas are coming from. And you may find yourself in a position where you're in a discussion with someone that has a completely different principle of thought. That doesn't mean that you have to change yours to match theirs or vice versa. One of you is going to be more wrong or more right than the other. But it does mean that you have to understand that this may be something that I have to make clear what my responsibility is, whether you're on the same page with that or not.
Yeah, exactly. So after talking about the freedom thing, you moved on to start the series on habits. And this is a big deal, and you talk about this quite a bit in your messages about habits. How did that become such an important part of your ministry?
I do talk about it a lot. Pretty sure, Greg, that you just said that I'm repeating myself. I'm repetitive, redundant,
Yes.
overstating it, and repeating things and being redundant.
Right, repetitively.
Yeah, over and over again. Yeah. Well, a long time ago, it kind of clicked with me for whatever reason that everything we do in life revolves around habits. We are all creatures of habit. Something that I talked about Sunday is this. Everything in our lives is a repeated process. We just don't always recognize it as habits. If I were to describe you to someone and they were to say, well, what's Greg like? I would describe traits that you are known for. Mm-hmm. I would describe your characteristics that I've come to know
My
you
good
for.
looks.
Not what I would immediately go to or even later go to. But I would talk about, he's a patient guy. He's a wise guy in a respectful sense.
That's just getting worse.
He's a wise guy. You are a caring person and you are wise and you are compassionate.
Yeah, okay.
Now, those are things and humble. Well, I know those things about you, not because they have just shown up once in a while, but because they're repeated. They're part of the ways I know you. Anytime we are known by someone, they're knowing things that are predictable, observable patterns in our lives.
Right.
That's habit.
Mm-hmm.
The way we speak to other people is habit. You and I have habits in the way we communicate with our family, with our friends. I can even take it further. We have habits in how we communicate with family that is different than the habits in how we communicate with friends.
Yes.
That is different than the habits we have of communicating with coworkers. We have different patterns of behavior that we will follow in different areas of our life. If we could ever crack the pattern loop and why we do those things, why we say the things we do, why we think the way we think, we're cracking the code of our own human behavior. Mm-hmm. You want to change your behavior, you have to figure out what's the habit loop, the process that you're repeating over and over again. That's the you that people know you by.
Right.
So if you say, well, I want my relationships to be better, well, what habits need to change? Mm-hmm. And it's not just habits of action, it's habits of thought. If you're speaking with someone, you have habits of thinking that you're running through in your mind while they're speaking to you.
Right.
You're processing things in a typical way for you. You're reaching opinions and forming judgments in a typical way for you. So if you figure out why do I tend to draw certain conclusions or why do I tend to go down certain mental pathways more than others, those are your habits of thinking. Mm-hmm. And they're affecting your decision making and they're affecting your communication and they're affecting your relationships because of that.
Right.
So if you can figure out our processes and habits, then you're starting to figure out your own heart. You're figuring out how to rewire the way you think. Mm-hmm. The Bible teaches us choice and consequence. That's an unbreakable law of the universe, is how I like to say it. It's God wired into the very operation of the universe. The universe is not chance. It's not just chaos. It cannot be consistent chaos and still be repeatable and predictable. Mm-hmm. Human behavior, even things in the outside world, is predictable because there are certain laws in effect. I believe that that's God wired. And the whole idea of choice and consequence is something that is definitive, predictable, that if you choose this, you're going to get this corresponding consequence. So that's where our habits are formed. We believe, this is the consequence I want. This is the way of choosing things to get that consequence. And then we learn to repeat that.
Right.
So if we can figure out the consequence we want, and then what's the best way to get there, then we develop new habits.
Yes.
And then we become creatures of habits that are growing and making us better instead of making us worse.
Right. As you were talking about that, I thought, I think we all kind of get that big idea of if I have good habits today, it's going to make my future more like I want it to be in the future.
Yeah.
The hard part for me is changing those habits.
Yes.
That's when it gets to be work.
Well, the good thing about it is it's hard work, but it's worth it.
Right.
And it's hard work, but it's not impossible work.
Uh-huh.
And we're going to talk a little bit about this Sunday, that The hard part about changing habits is breaking free from those old ones.
Right.
I think the hardest part, even before that, though, is seeing what habits we have that exist. Because I think most of us are kind of blind to our own patterns of behavior.
Right.
There has to be something that happens before we see something in ourselves that says, oh, that's the way I talk. Oh, that's the way I've been thinking. And it can be kind of unsettling. So that may be the more difficult thing, to see our blind spots and then to actually change our habits that are coming out of those blind spots. Can be excruciating,
Right.
but it's doable and it's worth it. Most of the time when we talk about habits, we talk about the big things. I'm going to quit smoking, or I'm going to quit eating so many sweets. We tend to think of big things like that, but most of our life is not governed by necessarily identifiable physical habits that we immediately see. Our lives are mostly governed by the invisible mental habits that show up everywhere throughout our day. And it's hard to change some of those, but it's doable and it's worth it.
And we're going to work on some of that Sunday in the message, identifying those habits a little bit and seeing how we can make progress on it.
God willing. And this is going to take us a few weeks. The idea of talking about habits is really simple on the surface, but then when you go to talk about actually rewiring the way we think and live, that's pretty complicated and could go on a lot more than what we're going to cover in these next few weeks.
Right.
We're going to talk about 3 different kinds of habits that we want to build into our lives. A lot of times whenever we talk about habits, even in myself, my own life, the first thing that I want to do is break bad habits. Mm-hmm. And that tends to get most of our attention and energy. Man, I got to quit this habit or that habit. I think there's a better approach.
Okay.
And rather than just trying to focus our energy on breaking bad habits, focus our energy on building good habits. Good habits will get us to the reward we're wanting. And as we start to build good habits that get us to the reward or consequence we're wanting, then the habits that are less productive start to fall away. So it's not that we attack a bad habit and get rid of it. It's that we build a good habit and develop those. That's where we're going to focus our energy at over the next few weeks.
Sounds great. Well, we encourage people to either come and visit with us here at Liberty Hill Church at 9 or 10:30 this Sunday, or if you're not quite ready for that, check us out online. On YouTube is the best place we found for people to watch, but you can find us on libertyhill.church and click on Watch Live, or on Facebook Live as well. Click on Liberty Hill Church and you'll find us. And we are excited to share this with people. Lives can be changed as people see how their habits are affecting and how God can help them change them.
And just to throw this out there, maybe you have a question about habits or something that you would like us to just cover, period, in some form of table talk or in a Sunday service. We would like to hear from you. Send us a line at info@libertyhill.church, and we would be glad to do our best to either get back with you personally or cover some of those ideas in our conversations. And if you haven't yet done so, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button, and that will keep you posted whenever we have new videos from Liberty Hill, whether they are kids ministries, life groups, Sunday morning events, or these boring pastoral table talks.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for watching with us today, and we look forward to seeing you again online or in person very soon.
Very good.